Hello, my friends, and welcome once again to A Story from the Heart. Before we begin today's rather unsettling tale, I need you to grasp a fundamental truth. When you look at a man over 60, it's easy to see someone whose race is run, someone whose glory days are a distant memory, someone who can be patronized, pushed aside, or taken advantage of. But what so many fail to see is that a man who has lived for 6 decades has gathered assets far more potent than youthful vigor, wisdom, patience, and the profound understanding of just how cruel the world can be. This is the story of Arthur Pendleton, a man who came to the devastating realization that his own children viewed him as little more than a roadblock on their path to an inheritance. They mistook his age for infirmity. They were about to receive a harsh lesson. Underestimating a man like Arthur is the final error you will ever make. If you've ever been made to feel that you're too old to be relevant, this story will serve as a reminder that some of the most formidable men in history were only just hitting their stride at 70. My name is Arthur Pendleton, and 2 days after my 70th birthday, my children presented me with a gift intended to end my life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's begin on Christmas morning, in my lovely Connecticut home, when everything still felt right with the world. The snow had been falling gently since the stroke of midnight, laying a soft white blanket over the grand colonial mansion my late wife, Eleanor, and I had cherished as our home for 35 years. The house was a picturesque scene, like something from a holiday postcard. Ivy-clad brick, mullioned windows casting a warm, inviting glow against the stark winter scenery, and plumes of smoke unfurling from 3 chimneys into the frosty December air. Inside, my dining room was a sea of sparkle, with crystal and candlelight dancing. The magnificent mahogany table, which had witnessed innumerable family milestones, was meticulously set for 6, myself, my 3 children, and their respective spouses. Garlands of fresh pine were elegantly woven around the chandelier, and the festive aroma of cinnamon and cloves from my spiced wine wafted through the house. I stood in the kitchen, making a small adjustment to my signet ring, a nervous tic I'd picked up in the 6 months since Eleanor's passing, and surveyed the feast I had painstakingly prepared. There was a prime rib with Yorkshire pudding, vegetables roasted from my own garden, and the classic apple tart from a recipe my mother taught me 4 decades ago. Everything was perfect, just as it had always been. "Father, you've truly outdone yourself," remarked Robert, my eldest at 42, as he began to carve the roast with the steady hand of a surgeon. He had inherited Eleanor's meticulous precision along with her law practice, though, sadly, not her warmth. "It smells absolutely divine, Arthur," chimed in Catherine, Robert's wife, though her smile was a polite formality that never quite reached her eyes. Catherine had always maintained a veneer of courtesy, but it was a distant one, treating me more like an elderly obligation to be managed than a father-in-law to be loved. My daughter Laura, aged 39, and navigating a recent divorce, barely glanced up from the screen of her phone. The Instagram crowd would go wild for this whole aesthetic, Dad. Very cozy grandfather vibes. Cozy grandfather vibes. As if the entirety of my life and being could be neatly packaged into a fleeting social media hashtag. My youngest, Daniel, who was 36, at least showed some genuine enthusiasm. "This, right here, is why I moved back to Connecticut, Dad. Nobody puts on a Christmas like you." Daniel had always held a special place in my heart, a fact I never dared to admit out loud. It was likely because he was the one who most resembled Eleanor. Her gentle eyes, her quick-to-form smile, and her innate ability to make everyone in her presence feel seen and valued. His wife, Megan, nodded her agreement, gently bouncing their 2-year-old daughter, Lily, on her knee. "Before we begin," Catherine announced, rising to her feet with a touch of theatricality. "We have a little something special for you, Arthur." She vanished into the foyer for a moment, and returned bearing an exquisitely wrapped gift box, done up in silver paper and tied with a deep wine-red ribbon. "This is from all of us," she declared, placing it before me with a grand sense of ceremony. "Something we thought you would truly cherish." I carefully undid the ribbon. I was always one to salvage wrapping paper and open the box. Inside, nestled among layers of tissue paper, was a bottle of wine. But this was not just any wine. It was a 1982 Bordeaux, a Chateau Margaux. The label was immaculate, the wax seal unbroken. "My goodness," I breathed, lifting the heavy bottle with a sense of reverence. "This must have set you back a fortune." "Only the very best for you, Father," Robert said, though his tone had a rehearsed quality to it. "We know how much you and Mom loved building your wine collection." He was right. Eleanor and I had devoted decades to curating a collection in our climate-controlled cellar, searching for unique vintages on our travels through France and Italy. This particular bottle would have been the undisputed crown jewel. "It's magnificent," I said, placing it carefully on the sideboard. "But you children really shouldn't have spent so much." "Don't give the cost a second thought," Laura said, her eyes still glued to her phone. "We can handle it." There was a strange edge to her voice when she said that, but I pushed the thought away. I figured she was still smarting from her divorce settlement, or feeling the pressure of her consulting business, which never seemed to bring in much actual revenue. We ate our dinner by the warm glow of candlelight, sticking to safe, comfortable topics. Lily's newest words, Daniel's recent promotion at his marketing agency, Robert's latest triumph in the courtroom. The conversation felt a little stilted, but I chalked it up to the lingering awkwardness that had descended upon our family gatherings since Eleanor's death. She had been our North Star, our center of gravity. In her absence, we were all struggling to find our footing with one another. After the meal, as I was in the kitchen clearing the plates, Catherine cornered me. "Arthur, that wine we got you. It's really something special, extremely rare." "Oh, I know, my dear. I was thinking I might open it on Eleanor's birthday next month. A proper toast to her memory." Catherine's face instantly lost all its color. Well, maybe you should wait even longer. Perhaps for your own birthday next year." "Catherine, are you quite all right? You seem distressed." "I'm fine," she said, a little too quickly. "Just tired. It's been a long day." But she didn't look fine. She looked positively terrified. Later that evening, long after everyone had departed, I sat in Eleanor's study, nursing a small glass of brandy and mulling over the strange undercurrents I had felt throughout the day. Catherine's bizarre reaction to my plan for the wine, Laura's disengaged air, even Robert had seemed unusually calculating. I walked over to the sideboard where the bottle of wine was resting, picking it up once more to admire its label. 1982 was a legendary year for Bordeaux, and Chateau Margaux was the stuff of legends. This bottle was likely worth 30, maybe more. My children had been generous, certainly, but such generosity from Robert, Laura, and Catherine was so out of character that it raised a flag. They weren't unkind people, but they were not known for their thoughtfulness. Their typical Christmas gifts for me were perfunctory, expensive ties, generic cufflinks, gift cards, to stores I never frequented. This wine was different. This wine was deeply personal, meaningful. It demonstrated an intimate knowledge of my passions and a genuine concern for my happiness. Or did it? I set the bottle down and picked up my phone, dialing the number of my old friend Henry Walsh, who lived a couple of towns away. "Henry, it's Arthur. I hope I'm not calling too late." "Never too late for you, my friend. How was Christmas with your children? Lovely, actually. They gave me an incredible bottle of wine. A 1,980. 2 Chateau Margaux. My word, I was wondering, would you and Martha be free to join me for dinner tomorrow evening? I thought we might open it together. A toast to Eleanor's memory. Henry's enthusiastic acceptance was a balm to my soul. He and Martha had been our closest companions for 20 years. They understood the profound significance of sharing an exceptional wine with people you hold dear. After hanging up the phone, I felt a sense of ease settle over me. Perhaps I had been overthinking my children's behavior. Grief had a way of making everything feel suspect, every small interaction laden with unspoken meaning. I was probably just being a paranoid old man. How profoundly wrong I was. The next morning, the phone rang at 7 a.m. It was Catherine, her voice unnaturally bright and cheerful. "Arthur, good morning. I was just thinking about that wonderful wine we gave you yesterday." As a matter of fact, yes. Henry and Martha are coming for dinner tonight, and I thought... Catherine's interruption was so sudden and sharp it caused me to jostle my coffee mug. "No, I mean, Arthur, you really shouldn't open that wine so soon." "Soon? It needs more time to settle from the journey. You know, transportation." Transportation. The bottle had made a 10-mile journey from whatever shop they had purchased it from. "Catherine, wine doesn't need to settle from transportation, especially not a vintage that has been aging for 40 years. "Well," the man at the wine shop said, "Arthur, please, just promise me you'll wait a few more days before you open it. Promise me." The desperation in her voice was now impossible to ignore. This had nothing to do with letting wine settle or proper aging. This was fear. "Catherine, is there something I should know about this wine?" "Of course not. It's so special, and I want you to enjoy it at the perfect moment. Maybe wait for New Year's Eve? That would be just perfect, wouldn't it?" New Year's Eve, 10 days away. Why was she so desperate for me to delay opening this bottle? "I'll consider it," I said, choosing my words with care. "Thank you for your concern." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen, my gaze fixed on the wine bottle on the counter. In the bright morning light, it appeared perfectly innocent. Deep green glass, an elegant label, an unbroken seal, but Catherine's frantic call had transformed it into something ominous. I picked up the bottle and inspected it more closely. The label was in pristine condition, but was it too pristine? The wax seal looked genuine, but I was hardly an expert in authenticating fine wines. The weight of it felt correct, but I set it back down and reached for my phone once more, this time dialing the most prestigious wine merchant in Hartford. "Yes, I'm making an inquiry about a 1,982 Chateau Margaux that might have been purchased at your establishment recently. Could you possibly check your sales records for the past week?" The clerk was polite and helpful, but his answer was unequivocal. They hadn't sold a single bottle of 1,982 Chateau Margaux in the last 6 months. In fact, they only had 2 such bottles in their entire inventory, and both were already reserved for long-standing clients. I called 3 other high-end wine shops in the area. None had sold a 1,982 Chateau Margaux in the recent past. So, where had my children managed to procure this rare and expensive bottle of wine? And, more pressingly, why was Catherine so terrified at the thought of me opening it? I spent the rest of the morning pacing the floors of my house, my mind a whirlwind of possibilities. Perhaps they had acquired it through an online auction or from a private collector. Perhaps Catherine was simply overwrought at the idea of me consuming such a costly wine on a casual evening instead of reserving it for some monumental occasion. But her fear had been visceral, palpable, the kind of terror that comes from harboring a dreadful secret. By noon, I had arrived at a decision that would ultimately save my life and shatter my family. I called Henry and regretfully canceled our dinner. Then, I took the bottle of wine and descended to my basement, to the climate-controlled cellar where Eleanor and I had carefully stored our collection for decades. I placed the bottle on a high shelf, tucked away behind several others, where it would be safe and out of sight. If my children had indeed given me this wine as a token of their love, it would wait there safely until I was truly ready to appreciate it. If, however, they had given it to me for some other darker reason, well, time would reveal the truth. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done since Eleanor's death. I scheduled an appointment with our family attorney, Leonard Vance, for the following morning. It was time to take a closer look at my will. Leonard Vance had been our family's legal counsel for a quarter of a century, handling everything from Eleanor's business dealings to our personal estate planning. He was a man of quiet competence and unimpeachable discretion, qualities I was in desperate need of as I sat across from him in his leather-appointed office the day after Christmas. "Arthur, you're looking well, as always," Leonard said, settling in behind his large mahogany desk. "Though I must admit, I was surprised to hear from you so soon after Eleanor's passing. Is everything all right?" I found my hand instinctively going to my signet ring, a gesture that had become second nature whenever I was nervous or lost in thought. "Leonard, I need you to walk me through my current will. Every single detail, every beneficiary, every contingency." His thick eyebrows rose a fraction of an inch. "Has something happened with the children?" "I'm not certain yet. That's what I'm hoping to ascertain." For the next hour, Leonard painstakingly reviewed the intricate estate plan that Eleanor and I had built over many years. The house and all its contents were to be divided equally among my children. The investment portfolio, valued at roughly $8 million, would also be split among them. There were smaller bequests designated for various charities and for our long-serving housekeeper, Mr. Gable. "And the properties in Hawaii?" I inquired. "Those are held within the Pendleton Family Trust, which you have complete control over for the duration of your life. Upon your passing, they would be transferred to your children as well." Leonard rustled through a few pages. "Current market value is estimated at approximately $4 million. So, my children are poised to inherit somewhere in the neighborhood of $12 million when I die." "That's correct. Though, given your excellent health and your family's history of longevity, that is likely many years down the road." Excellent health. I was 70 years old, a widower living by myself in a very large house. To most people, my own children included, I probably appeared fragile, on a downward slope. "Leonard, I want to make some alterations to my will." "What sort of alterations?" The question had kept me awake all night, lying in the bed I had shared with Eleanor for 35 years. "I want to introduce some conditions, performance requirements, if you will, for my children to be eligible for their inheritance." Leonard placed his pen down and looked at me with a serious expression. "Arthur, that is generally not advisable. Performance clauses in wills can often become a source of family disputes and protracted legal battles." "And what if I am no longer concerned about family disputes?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy and unspoken. Leonard had known me as one half of a devoted partnership, a supportive father, a man who had always placed family harmony above all else. This new version of Arthur Pendleton, suspicious, strategic, and potentially ruthless, was an unfamiliar figure to us both. "Tell me what you have in mind," he said at last. "I want my children to demonstrate that they are deserving of their inheritance. Not through grand, empty gestures or dramatic shifts in character, but through simple, basic human decency." visiting me on a regular basis, including me in their lives, treating me with respect instead of seeing me as an inconvenience to be managed. Leonard nodded slowly. That's a reasonable sentiment, though it can be difficult to define in legal terms. Then let's define it. Monthly visits, phone calls twice a week, inclusion in family celebrations and significant decisions. If they are incapable of showing basic filial respect, they will forfeit their inheritance. And if they forfeit, where would the money go? I've given that some thought as well. Medical research. Specifically, research into diseases that affect the elderly. If my children can't be bothered to care for their own aging father, then perhaps their inheritance can help others care for theirs. Leonard began to take notes, his face a mask of contemplation. Arthur, may I ask what has brought this on? Yesterday, you were the same loving father you have always been. Today, you're discussing conditional inheritances and performance metrics. I reached into my coat pocket and took out my phone, pulling up a photograph I had taken of the wine bottle. My children gave me this for Christmas. It's worth several $1,000s, which is an uncharacteristic display of generosity from them. When I mentioned the possibility of opening it to toast Eleanor's memory, my daughter-in-law became almost hysterical, pleading with me to wait. I placed the phone on his desk. I've contacted every reputable wine merchant in the region. None of them have sold a bottle like this recently. Leonard studied the image on the screen. So where did they acquire it? That is one question. The other is why Catherine is so desperate to keep me from drinking it. A look of understanding slowly dawned in Leonard's eyes. He had practiced law long enough to recognize the familiar shape of familial betrayal, even when it arrived gift-wrapped in festive paper. Arthur, you don't truly believe. I don't know what to believe. But I have lived for 70 years, Leonard. I have learned to trust my instincts when a situation feels fundamentally wrong. Have you considered having the wine tested? The thought had crossed my mind, but I had dismissed it as a symptom of paranoia. Now, sitting in Leonard's office with my suspicions articulated in a logical sequence, it seemed like an act of simple prudence. Who would perform such a test, and what would I tell them I'm looking for? I know a private laboratory that handles sensitive matters with the utmost discretion. They can perform a comprehensive screen for a wide array of substances without inquiring as to why you need the information. Leonard jotted down a name and a phone number on a piece of his letterhead. Dr. Marcus Thorne. He has assisted us with several cases involving suspected tampering or adulteration. He's very professional, very confidential. I folded the paper and slipped it into my pocket, next to my car keys and reading glasses, the ordinary accessories of an elderly man that my children likely viewed as symbols of my helplessness. Now, about these changes to the will, Leonard continued. How quickly would you like to put them into effect? Immediately. If my children are indeed planning something, I want them to face the consequences sooner rather than later. And if they aren't, if this is all just a misunderstanding. I thought about Catherine's palpable panic, Laura's distracted air, Robert's calculating glances during our Christmas dinner. Then they will have no trouble meeting the conditions, and nothing will change except that I'll get to spend more time with my family. Leonard spent the next hour drafting the necessary modifications to my will. By the time we were finished, my children's inheritance was now contingent upon them treating me like a human being rather than an obstacle. They were required to visit at least twice a month, call twice a week, and include me in all major family decisions. A failure to meet these requirements for a period of more than 60 days would trigger a complete and total disinheritance. There is one last thing, I said, as Leonard prepared the final documents for my signature. I don't want my children to be informed of these changes just yet. Can you maintain confidentiality on this matter until we know for certain what we're dealing with? Of course, attorney-client privilege ensures the absolute privacy of all our conversations. As I drove home from Leonard's office, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Eleanor's death. A sense of purpose. For 6 long months, I had been adrift, merely going through the motions of life, feeling as though I was simply waiting for the end. Now, I was waiting for something to begin. That afternoon, I called Dr. Marcus Thorne's laboratory and scheduled an appointment for the following morning. I informed his receptionist that I required a comprehensive analysis of a wine sample for personal reasons. She asked no further questions. That evening, I ate dinner alone in my dining room, the very same room where my children had presented me with their generous Christmas gift. The bottle of wine sat on the sideboard, looking innocent and elegant, its surface catching the light from the chandelier. I raised my glass of water in a silent mock toast. "Here's to family," I said to the empty room, "and to discovering what family truly means." Outside, the snow continued its gentle descent, blanketing my house and garden in a layer of pristine white that was both beautiful and peaceful. But beneath that serene surface, the ground was frozen solid. Some things that appear pure and innocent on the outside are, in fact, cold and lifeless within. I was about to find out which category my children belonged to. Dr. Marcus Thorne's laboratory was situated in a converted warehouse in an industrial part of Hartford, the kind of unassuming place one drives past without a second glance unless one has specific business there. I parked my car between a florist's delivery van and a plumber's truck, feeling a bit absurd as I walked toward the unmarked entrance, carrying a bottle of wine in a plain paper bag. Dr. Thorne was a man in his 40s, with a sharp, intelligent face, steel-gray hair, and wire-rimmed glasses that gave him the air of a scholar rather than a forensic scientist. His laboratory was immaculate and modern, filled with gleaming equipment I couldn't begin to identify, but which looked both expensive and precise. "Mr. Pendleton," he said, shaking my hand with a firm, confident grip, "Leonard Vance explained that you require a comprehensive analysis of this wine sample. Can you tell me what your specific concerns are?" I placed the bottle on his stainless steel counter, a wave of foolishness washing over me. "I have reason to suspect it may have been tampered with." Dr. Thorne's expression remained impassive. In his line of work, he had likely encountered far stranger requests than an elderly man asking to have his Christmas wine tested for poison. "What kind of tampering do you suspect?" "I don't know. That's what I'm hoping you can tell me." He picked up the bottle, turning it over in the light and carefully examining the seal. "This appears to be a rather expensive vintage. May I ask what makes you suspect it has been adulterated?" I recounted the story of the Christmas gift, my children's uncharacteristic generosity, and Catherine's panicked reaction when I mentioned opening it. Dr. Thorne listened intently, without interruption, making a few notes on a pad. "I can screen for a wide range of toxic substances," he said when I had finished. "Heavy metals, organic poisons, synthetic compounds. The full analysis will take 48 hours and will cost $1,200 to either confirm or allay my deepest fears about my own children. It seemed like money well spent, regardless of the outcome. "How can we do this without disturbing the evidence?" I asked. A small smile touched Dr. Thorne's lips, the first crack in his professional veneer. "You're thinking like a detective, Mr. Pendleton. We will extract a small sample directly through the cork, using a specialized fine-gauge needle. The bottle itself will appear completely untouched." 2 hours later, I was driving home with the bottle of wine, now secretly sampled, knowing that by Thursday I would have my answer. I spent the next 2 days in a strange state of limbo, carrying on with my usual routines while my mind was a storm of possibilities. If the wine was clean, I would feel foolish but immensely relieved. If it contained something dangerous. The call came on Wednesday evening, while I was reading in Eleanor's study. "Mr. Pendleton, this is Dr. Thorne. We've completed our analysis of your sample, and I believe it would be best if we met in person to go over the results." His tone told me everything I needed to know. "It's positive, isn't it? I would prefer to discuss the specific details in person. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning?" Thursday morning found me back in Dr. Thorne's sterile laboratory, my hands trembling slightly as he laid out a series of test results across his counter. "Mr. Pendleton, the wine contains significant levels of ricin." Ricin? Even I knew what that was. A deadly poison derived from castor beans, a favorite of assassins, because it was notoriously difficult to detect and its symptoms mimicked those of a natural illness. "How much?" I asked, surprised by the calmness in my own voice. "Enough to kill a man of your size within 24 to 48 hours. The symptoms would manifest gradually: nausea, vomiting, respiratory distress. Most physicians would likely diagnose it as a severe case of food poisoning or the flu until it was far too late." I sank heavily into the chair Dr. Thorne offered. My children, my own children, had tried to murder me. "Are you all right, Mr. Pendleton?" "I'm processing. What would have happened if I had drunk this wine? You would be dead by now. The concentration of the substance suggests that whoever prepared this was not taking any chances. Whoever prepared this, not whoever bought it or whoever gave it to me. Whoever prepared it. Doctor, is it possible to determine when this substance was introduced into the wine?" "Not with absolute certainty. However, ricin is water-soluble. Had it been added years ago, during the bottling process, it would have either precipitated out or been filtered during the wine's natural aging and settling. This was added very recently, likely within the last few weeks. Within the last few weeks, around the same time, my children had started their Christmas shopping. I thanked Dr. Thorne and drove home in a daze. My beautiful house, which had been my sanctuary since Eleanor's passing, now felt like a crime scene. Every room was filled with memories of my children's younger years. Their first steps, their lost teeth, their graduation photos. How does a father reconcile those cherished memories with the chilling knowledge that those same children had tried to poison him? I called Leonard Vance and scheduled an emergency meeting for that afternoon. "Good heavens, Arthur," he exclaimed when I showed him the laboratory report. "You must contact the police immediately." "And tell them what? That I suspect my own children of attempted murder, based on a bottle of wine I haven't even opened, with no witnesses and no direct evidence linking any of them to the act of poisoning it?" Leonard studied the report again. "The forensic evidence is certainly compelling, but you're right. It's not legally sufficient on its own. Any competent defense attorney would argue that the wine could have been tampered with by someone else before your children purchased it. Or they might even suggest that you poisoned it yourself to frame them. And why would I do that? Money. Perhaps you have gambling debts or significant medical expenses. Perhaps you wish to disinherit your children and need a justification that would stand up in probate court." I managed a grim smile. "I was married to a lawyer for 35 years, Leonard. I understand how these things work. So, what is your plan?" I had been wrestling with that very question all morning. "I want to wait, and I want to watch. If they tried to kill me once, they will almost certainly try again, especially when I don't conveniently die from drinking the wine. The next time, I will be ready." Leonard looked deeply uncomfortable. "Arthur, this is an incredibly dangerous course of action. If you are right about your children, If I am right about my children, then I need irrefutable evidence. Evidence that will hold up in a court of law. Enough evidence to ensure they can never try this again, with me or with anyone else. And if you're wrong, I thought about Catherine's sheer terror when I had mentioned opening the wine, about the fact that none of the local merchants had sold this particular vintage, about the 12 million my children stood to inherit upon my death. I'm not wrong. That evening, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Robert. Darling, I just wanted to thank you all again for that magnificent bottle of wine. I'm planning to open it this weekend to ring in the new year properly. This weekend? His voice was carefully neutral. That sounds lovely, Father. The second call was to Laura. I'm hosting a small New Year's Eve get-together, just a few close friends, and I thought I would finally open that gorgeous Bordeaux you children gave me. Oh, a distinct pause. Are you sure you want to open such an expensive bottle for just a casual party? Life is too short to keep the good wine saved forever. The third call was to Daniel. I wanted you and Megan to be the first to know. I'm opening your Christmas wine on New Year's Eve. I thought it would be a fitting way to toast the year to come. That's great, Dad. Megan and I are looking forward to celebrating with you. Daniel's voice was filled with genuine warmth, which gave me a glimmer of hope that perhaps not all of my children were involved in this monstrous plot. But it also meant that at least one of them was planning to stand by and watch me die. By Saturday morning, I had my answer. Catherine called at 9 a.m., her voice tight with a barely concealed hysteria. Arthur, I am so dreadfully sorry, but Robert and I won't be able to make it to your party tonight. He's come down with something absolutely awful. Fever, vomiting, the works. Probably the flu. The flu. How very convenient. Oh, that's terrible. Should I postpone the party? No. No, don't you dare change your plans on our account. But Arthur, perhaps you shouldn't open that wine tonight. If Robert is sick, it could be something contagious, and you wouldn't want to risk your health. I'll be fine, my dear. I'll just open a different bottle. Promise me you won't open the Bordeaux. Promise me. The desperation in her voice was raw and undeniable. She knew exactly what would happen if I drank that wine. That afternoon, I prepared for my New Year's Eve party. A party that would consist of me, alone, staging an elaborate performance for an audience of my potential murderers. At 7 p.m., I placed the poisoned bottle of wine prominently on my dining room table, opened a bottle of harmless Pinot Noir, and poured myself a glass. Then I called Laura. I'm just about to open the Bordeaux, I announced cheerfully. I wish you were here to share it with me. Dad, wait. I hung up the phone and turned it off. At 8 p.m., I called Daniel from my landline. The wine is absolutely magnificent. Your mother would have adored it. I'm so glad, Dad. Save some for us to try when we visit next week. At 9 p.m., I carefully poured the poisoned wine down my kitchen sink and called Robert's house, letting the phone ring until the answering machine picked up. Thank you for the wine, I said into the machine. It was exactly what I needed. Then I went upstairs, drew a hot bath, and soaked in the lavender-scented water while I waited for my children to reveal their hand. I didn't have to wait very long. I need to pause Arthur's story here for a moment to share something that could change your life. If you've ever been told that you're too old to start anew, let me assure you that is a lie. Your story is not finished, and there are still many chapters left for you to write. Our best-selling book, Reclaiming Your Peace After Pain, is filled with simple, powerful steps to help you heal, rebuild your life, and fall in love with living again. Just like Arthur, you possess more wisdom than they give you credit for, more strength than they can possibly realize, and more options than they want you to be aware of. This book has already helped thousands of people to recognize the warning signs of manipulation, to set boundaries that protect their well-being, and to reclaim their power from those who would underestimate them. Whether you are contending with family betrayal, financial manipulation, or simply the feeling of being invisible in your own life, this book will provide you with practical steps to regain control and write your own triumphant ending. Click the link in the description box below and begin your new chapter today. Don't let anyone convince you that your best years are behind you. Author is about to demonstrate that the most dangerous men are often the ones who have been underestimated. Now, let's see what happens when his children believe their plan has succeeded. Catherine arrived at my house at 6 a.m. on New Year's Day. I watched from my bedroom window as she parked her car in my circular driveway, where she sat for several long minutes before slowly making her way to my front door. She looked utterly exhausted. Her usually immaculate hair was disheveled, and her expensive coat was wrinkled, as if she had slept in it. I let her knock 3 times before I answered the door, taking care to appear groggy and slightly confused. "Catherine, what on earth are you doing here so early?" "Arthur, thank God you're all right." She pushed past me into the foyer, her eyes immediately scanning my face, searching for any signs of illness. "How are you feeling?" "Fine, my dear. Why wouldn't I be?" "You're not. You're not nauseous? No stomach problems? No difficulty breathing?" The symptoms of ricin poisoning, recited with the precision of someone who had researched them extensively. "Should I be having those symptoms?" Catherine's face went completely white. "No, of course not. It's just, with Robert being so sick, I was worried you might have caught whatever he has." "I thought Robert had the flu." "He does. He did. He's better now." Catherine was slowly backing toward the door, her palpable relief at finding me alive, warring with her utter confusion as to why I wasn't dead. "I should go. Let you get back to your rest. Before you leave, would you like a cup of coffee? I've just made a full pot." "Coffee?" Catherine looked at me with terror, as if I had just offered her a glass of poison. "Just coffee, my dear. Nothing exotic." "No, I should get home to Robert." As soon as she had gone, I called Leonard Vance at his home. "They expected me to be dead," I told him. "Catherine came to check on me this morning, and she was visibly shocked to find me alive and well." "What's your next move, Arthur?" "I wait for them to try again, and this time I'll be ready with cameras." That very afternoon, I contacted a home security company and arranged for a complete surveillance system to be installed within 48 hours. I wanted cameras in every room, motion sensors and audio recording equipment, everything I would need to document my children's next murder attempt. "We don't usually get requests for installations this comprehensive," the technician commented as he strategically positioned a camera in my kitchen. "Is there a specific security concern we should be aware of?" "I am a 70-year-old widower living alone in a very large house," I replied. "I believe that is security concern enough." While the security system was being installed, I made another important call, this time to my long-serving housekeeper, Mr. Gable. "Mr. Pendleton, I was so very sorry to hear about Mrs. Eleanor," he said, his voice full of genuine warmth. "Is there anything at all I can do to help?" Mr. Gable had worked for our family for 15 years, coming twice a week to clean and occasionally staying to help prepare meals when we entertained. He was discreet, observant, and completely trustworthy. "Actually, there is something," I said. "I would like you to start coming in daily for the next few weeks. I'm finding it a bit overwhelming to manage everything on my own." "Of course, sir. Should I continue with my usual duties?" "Yes, but I would also like you to pay special attention to the kitchen. Please make a note of any food or drink that appears to have been tampered with in any way. And if any of my family members visit while I am out, I need you to document exactly what they do and where they go in the house. Mr. Gable had worked for wealthy families long enough to recognize the subtle signs of domestic turmoil. I understand completely, Mr. Pendleton. You can rely on my discretion. By Wednesday, my house was equipped with more surveillance technology than most jewelry stores. Every entrance was monitored, every room was under watch, and every conversation was being recorded. If my children made another attempt on my life, I would have the evidence to ensure it would stand up in any court of law. I didn't have to wait long. On Thursday evening, Laura called with an invitation I had been anticipating. "Dad, I feel just awful that we missed your New Year's party. Would you like to come over for dinner this weekend? I'm making your favorite lamb recipe." My favorite lamb recipe. The one that required hours of slow cooking and yielded a rich, dark sauce that could easily mask the taste of poison. That sounds wonderful, my dear. Saturday night. Perfect. It will be just family. Me, Daniel, Megan, and little Lily. Robert and Catherine are still recovering from their flu. Still recovering from their flu? Or preparing for the next phase of their insidious plan? Saturday evening found me sitting in Laura's trendy downtown loft, a converted warehouse space with exposed brick walls and industrial fixtures that had likely cost more than most people's homes. Laura had always had a flair for the dramatic, as if her life were a carefully staged production rather than a reality. "Dad, you look wonderful," she said, kissing my cheek as she took my coat. "I was a little worried you might still be feeling the effects of New Year's Eve." "What effects would those be, my dear?" "Well, you know how wine can sometimes affect people our age. It can take days to fully recover from a good celebration." Our age. Laura was 39 years old, yet she was already placing me in the category of the elderly and frail. Daniel and Megan were in the living room, playing with Lily on a blanket spread across the polished concrete floor. They looked up as I entered, and I caught a flicker of something in Daniel's expression. Concern, perhaps? Or was it guilt? "Dad, how are you feeling?" he asked, studying my face intently. "Perfect, darling. Why does everyone keep asking me that?" "No reason. You just seemed a little tired when I spoke to you on New Year's Eve." New Year's Eve? The night I had supposedly drunk the poisoned wine and should, by all rights, now be dead. Laura bustled about her open-concept kitchen, adding the final touches to dinner. The lamb smelled magnificent, rich and savory with herbs, from what she claimed was her rooftop garden. She had always been an excellent cook, inheriting my love of feeding people but adding her own modern twist to traditional recipes. "Wine, Dad?" she asked, holding up a bottle of red I didn't recognize. "Just a small glass, dear." Laura poured wine for everyone except herself, claiming she was trying to cut back as part of her New Year's resolution. I noticed that she was particularly careful with my glass, handling it separately from the others. "A toast," Daniel said, raising his glass. "To family, and to Dad's continued good health." Continued good health. The phrase hung in the air, a strange mix of prayer and threat. We ate dinner at Laura's sleek glass dining table, making polite conversation about Lily's development, Daniel's work, and Megan's plans to return to nursing school. They were all normal family topics, but beneath the veneer of pleasant chatter, I could sense a powerful undercurrent of tension and expectation. Laura kept glancing at me throughout the meal, watching for any sign that I might be falling ill. She had prepared a beautiful dessert, a chocolate mousse with a raspberry sauce, but she seemed distracted as she served it. "This is delicious, Laura," I said, savoring the rich chocolate. "You've really outdone yourself." Thank you, Dad. I hope you enjoy every single bite. There was something odd about the way she said it, but the mousse itself tasted perfectly normal. Sweet, creamy, with just a hint of a liqueur I couldn't quite place. We finished dinner around 9 p.m., and I made my excuses to leave early, feigning fatigue. "Are you sure you're all right to drive?" Daniel asked, walking me to the door. "You seem a little unsteady." Did I? I felt perfectly fine. But Daniel was looking at me with a kind of intense concern, one usually reserves for someone showing obvious signs of distress. "I'm fine, darling. Just tired. Maybe you should stay here tonight. Laura has a guest room." "Absolutely not. I sleep much better in my own bed." I drove home with extreme care, hyper-aware of every sensation in my body. Was I imagining the slight feeling of dizziness, or was something actually affecting my coordination? By the time I arrived back at my house, I was convinced that Laura had indeed poisoned something I had consumed. But I had been prepared for this very possibility. Before leaving for dinner, I had taken a precaution that my children could not have anticipated. I had swallowed a small dose of ipecac, a medication that induces vomiting within minutes of consuming anything dangerous. As I walked through my front door, the ipecac began to take effect. I barely made it to my bathroom before my body violently expelled everything I had eaten at Laura's dinner. The lamb, the wine, the chocolate mousse, all of it came up in powerful waves that left me shaking and empty but alive. I rinsed my mouth and immediately checked my hidden cameras to ensure they had recorded my return home and my subsequent violent illness. Tomorrow, I would have samples of my vomit tested to determine what Laura had used to try to poison me. But tonight, I had a different priority. I called Laura's landline from my bedroom phone, letting it ring until her voicemail picked up. "Laura, it's Dad. I just wanted to thank you for the lovely dinner. I'm home safe now, and I'm feeling exactly as you probably expected me to feel. Sleep well, my dear." Then I went to bed and waited for the morning, when my children would discover that their second attempt at murder had also failed. Some lessons, it seems, take more than one try to learn, but some teachers have infinite patience. The laboratory results confirmed what I already knew. Laura had laced my chocolate mousse with enough cyanide to kill a horse. "Mr. Pendleton, this is the second positive result for a lethal poison I have given you in the span of 2 weeks," Dr. Thorne said, reviewing the test results in his sterile laboratory. "Have you considered the possibility that someone is actively trying to murder you?" The thought had occurred to me. These are not amateur attempts. Both ricin and cyanide require a specific knowledge to obtain and prepare safely. Whoever is doing this has done their research on methods, dosages, and delivery systems. How much cyanide was in the dessert sample? Enough to cause death within 6 hours. The strong flavors of the chocolate and raspberry would have effectively masked the bitter almond taste of the cyanide until it was too late. I sat in Dr. Thorne's office, surrounded by scientific instruments that could detect poisons at a molecular level, and I marveled at the chilling efficiency of my children's murder attempts. They had chosen substances that would mimic natural causes of death: heart failure, stroke, a sudden, catastrophic illness. If I hadn't been suspicious enough to have the evidence tested, everyone would have simply assumed I had died of old age or some unforeseen natural cause. "Doctor, I need you to preserve these samples and document everything you have found. I may need this evidence for a court of law. Are you planning to press criminal charges?" "I'm planning to end this before they can make a third attempt." That afternoon, I met with Leonard Vance to review my options. "You have enough evidence for attempted murder charges against both Catherine and Laura," he said, studying the 2 laboratory reports. "The police would have to take this very seriously." "And then what happens?" They get arrested, they post bail, and they disappear to avoid a trial. Or worse, they accelerate their timeline and try to kill me before the case can even go to court. Leonard looked deeply troubled. Arthur, what you're suggesting sounds like vigilante justice. I'm suggesting self-defense. My children have tried to murder me twice in 2 weeks. I am 70 years old, living alone, with no one to protect me but myself. What exactly do you have in mind? I had been contemplating this very question ever since Dr. Thorne had confirmed the cyanide results. My children saw me as weak, elderly, an easy target who wouldn't fight back. They had been so confident in their abilities as killers that they had made crucial mistakes. Now, it was time to turn their overconfidence against them. I want to set a trap, I said, something that will force them to reveal themselves completely, with witnesses present and cameras recording their every move. What kind of trap? A family dinner, right here in my house. All 3 children, their spouses, little Lily. I'll serve wine, the same wine they gave you for Christmas. Leonard's eyes widened. Arthur, that wine contains enough ricin to kill everyone at the table. Not if I substitute the bottles. I'll serve a harmless wine from identical bottles, but my children won't know about the substitution. When Catherine and Laura react with panic, when they try to stop people from drinking, when they reveal their knowledge of the poison, you'll have your confession. I'll have everything I need to destroy them. We spent the next hour meticulously planning the logistics. I would host a belated Christmas celebration the following Saturday, claiming I wanted to make up for the holidays that had been disrupted by their various illnesses. I would serve the Chateau Margaux prominently, making a grand ceremony of opening the special wine my children had given me. Meanwhile, Leonard would arrange for discreet witnesses to be present. A court reporter hidden in my study, a detective stationed in my kitchen, and cameras recording every word and every gesture. If this works, Leonard warned, your family will be destroyed forever. There will be no going back. I thought about the ricin-laced wine bottle, about the cyanide poison mousse, about the cold, methodical calculation required to plan your own father's murder. My family was destroyed the moment they decided to kill me for money, I replied. I'm just making sure everyone else knows it too. That evening, I made the phone calls that would set my trap in motion. Robert, darling, I'm hosting a special dinner this Saturday to make up for our interrupted holidays, and I've decided to finally open that beautiful wine you all gave me for Christmas. The Bordeaux? His voice was carefully controlled. Are you certain you want to open something so valuable? Life's too short to save the good wine forever. Will you and Catherine be able to join us? A pause. We'll be there. The second call went to Laura. I'm planning a family celebration this Saturday, and I want to make it special by opening the Chateau Margaux. It seems only fitting to share something so precious with the people who gave it to me. Dad, are you sure? That wine is really expensive, which is precisely why we should enjoy it together. Family is more important than money, don't you think? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know about Laura's priorities. The third call was to Daniel. I'm hosting a dinner party this Saturday, and I'd love for you, Megan, and Lily to be there. I'm opening the wine you all gave me for Christmas. That sounds wonderful, Dad. We'll be there. Daniel still sounded genuine, which continued to give me hope that at least one of my children wasn't actively trying to murder me. But it also meant that at least one innocent person would be present when I revealed the others as killers. By Friday evening, everything was in place. Leonard had arranged for a Detective Lieutenant, Marcus Shaw, to be present, disguised as a caterer I had hired for the evening. A court reporter named John Mills would be hidden in my study with a direct audio feed from the dining room. High-definition cameras would record every word, every expression, every moment of panic, when my children realized their murder weapon was about to be consumed by the entire family. I spent Friday night in my study, writing what might be my final letter to each of my children. If something went wrong, if they realized what I was planning and turned violent, I wanted them to understand exactly why I had chosen this path to my children. By the time you read this, you will know that I discovered your attempts to murder me. The ricin-laced wine, the cyanide, poisoned dessert, the careful, methodical planning required to kill your own father for his inheritance. I want you to understand that I am not angry. I am heartbroken. The children I raised, the people I loved more than my own life, decided that my money was worth more than my existence. You calculated that 12 million was sufficient compensation for becoming fatherless. You were wrong about the money. My actual estate is worth considerably more than you realized, hidden away in trusts and accounts you never knew existed. But more importantly, you were wrong about me. You thought I was weak, elderly, an easy victim who wouldn't fight back. You forgot that I survived the Depression as a child, built a successful business with your mother, and raised 3 children while managing a household and a career. You forgot that weak people do not accumulate 12 million by accident. Your attempts on my life have failed because I am not the helpless old man you imagine me to be. I am Arthur Pendleton, and Arthur Pendleton does not die easily. What happens next is entirely up to you. You can confess your crimes, accept the consequences, and perhaps salvage some small shred of dignity from this disaster. Or you can continue lying, continue scheming, and discover exactly how ruthless your elderly father can be when his life is threatened. Choose wisely. You will not get another chance. Arthur. I sealed the letters and placed them in my safe, next to my revised will and the laboratory reports documenting my children's poison attempts. Whatever happened tomorrow, there would be a record of everything they had done and everything I had discovered. Saturday morning, I woke early and prepared for what would either be a triumph of justice or my final meal. I dressed carefully in my best suit, the one Eleanor had always said made me look distinguished. I styled my hair meticulously. I twisted the signet ring on my finger, the ring Eleanor had given me on our wedding day, the one that had become my armor against a world that saw elderly men as invisible. Today, I would be anything but invisible. Today, my children would learn that some fathers love their children enough to save them from themselves, even if it means destroying the family forever. Today, the poison would finally claim its intended victim. Not me, but the illusion that we were a loving family, instead of a nest of vipers. Some gifts are meant to kill. Some gifts succeed, just not in the way their givers intended. The dining room had never looked more beautiful. I had set the table with our finest china, the Wedgwood service that had belonged to Eleanor's grandmother, cream-colored porcelain with delicate, hand-painted roses that seemed to dance in the light of the crystal chandelier. Sterling silver flatware gleamed against the crisp Irish linen tablecloth, and centerpieces of fresh flowers from my greenhouse filled the air with the fragrant scent of winter jasmine. At the head of the table, positioned like a guest of honor, sat the bottle of 1982 Chateau Margaux that my children had given me for Christmas. The very same bottle that contained enough ricin to kill every person in the room, except it didn't. The night before, I had carefully removed the poisoned wine using a surgical syringe, replacing it with an identical vintage from Eleanor's collection. The ricin-laced Bordeaux now sat safely in Leonard Vance's office safe, awaiting its role as irrefutable evidence in the criminal trials that would surely follow tonight's revelations. Detective Lieutenant Marcus Shaw moved with quiet efficiency through my kitchen, arranging hors d'oeuvres on silver platters while maintaining the perfect disguise of a professional caterer. He was a man in his 40s, with a kind of sharp, observant eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Pendleton, the recording equipment is functioning perfectly," he said, quietly, as he garnished canapés with practiced precision. "We will capture every word spoken in the dining room, and the court reporter, Mr. Mills, is positioned in your study with a clear audio feed. Everything will be documented for legal proceedings." At 6 p.m. sharp, Robert and Catherine arrived. They both looked nervous. Catherine's usual flawless composure was showing cracks around the edges. She kept glancing at the wine bottle on the dining room table as if it were a loaded gun. "Father, you look lovely," Robert said, kissing my cheek with lips that felt cold against my skin. "This is quite an elaborate setup for a simple family dinner." "Nothing is too elaborate for the people I love most," I replied, watching his face for any flicker of guilt or recognition. Catherine had gone directly to the dining room and was staring at the wine bottle with barely concealed horror. "Arthur, are you certain you want to open this wine tonight? It's so valuable. Perhaps we should save it for a more appropriate occasion." "What occasion could be more appropriate than celebrating family?" "Well, I just think maybe a smaller bottle would be better. Something less expensive." Laura and Daniel arrived together, having shared a ride from the city. Laura immediately noticed the prominent display of the Chateau Margaux and went pale. "Dad, wow! You're really going all out tonight." "I wanted to make this evening special. After all the disruptions over the holidays, I thought we needed a proper celebration." Daniel hugged me warmly, and for a fleeting moment I felt a pang of doubt about my plan. If Daniel was innocent, tonight would shatter his world along with the lives of his siblings. But if I was wrong about his innocence, tonight might be my last chance to expose the truth before they finally succeeded in killing me. Megan arrived with little Lily, who toddled around my house with the fearless curiosity of a 2-year-old. Watching her explore the rooms where her aunts and father had grown up, I felt a deep sadness for the innocence that was about to be lost tonight. "Dad, everything looks beautiful," Megan said, admiring the table setting. "Are we celebrating something special?" "We're celebrating survival," I said, noting how both Catherine and Laura flinched at the word. We began with cocktails in the living room, making small talk about Lily's latest vocabulary explosion and Daniel's recent promotion, but I could feel the tension radiating from Catherine and Laura like heat from a furnace. They kept exchanging furtive glances, having some kind of silent, desperate conversation about what to do. "Shall we move to the dining room?" I announced at 7:30. "I'm eager to taste that wonderful wine you gave me." Catherine actually gasped. "Arthur, maybe we should eat first. Wine is better with food." "We'll have wine with dinner, my dear. But I want to open this special bottle now, to let it breathe properly." I walked to the sideboard where I had placed a silver wine opener, an antique piece that Eleanor and I had bought in France on our honeymoon. Catherine and Laura watched my every movement, like condemned prisoners watching their executioner. "This is such a beautiful bottle," I said, lifting it reverently. 1,980. 2 was an exceptional year for Bordeaux, wasn't it? "Dad, wait," Laura interrupted. "I just remembered I brought a different bottle that might be better for tonight. Something more accessible." She reached into her purse and pulled out a bottle of ordinary Cabernet Sauvignon, probably worth 30 compared to the 3.0 value of the Chateau Margaux. "How thoughtful, dear. But I am particularly looking forward to this one. After all, it was your Christmas gift to me." I began to work the corkscrew into the bottle, and Catherine made a sound that was almost a whimper. "Arthur, please, you don't understand." "What don't I understand, Catherine?" "The wine. There might be something wrong with it." The room fell silent, except for the soft scraping of the corkscrew against the cork. Everyone was staring at Catherine, who looked as if she was about to faint. What could possibly be wrong with it? I asked innocently. It might have. Spoiled. Old wine sometimes spoils. This wine has been properly stored for 40 years. It shouldn't be spoiled. I continued to work on the cork. Unless something happened to it more recently. Robert stepped forward. Father, if Catherine thinks there might be a problem with the wine, perhaps we should err on the side of caution. What kind of problem, Robert? He looked at his wife, then at Laura, then back at me. Just a problem. Sometimes expensive wines aren't what they seem to be. The cork came free with a soft pop that sounded like a gunshot in the tense silence. There, I said, setting the bottle on the table. Now it can breathe while we have our dinner. Catherine was gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles had turned white. Laura looked as if she was going to be sick. Even Robert had lost his usual unflappable composure. Only Daniel seemed relaxed, though he was watching his siblings with a look of growing concern. "Is everything all right?" he asked. "You all look like you've seen a ghost." "Everything's perfect," I said, beginning to pour the wine into the glasses I had arranged around the bottle. "Catherine, you seem upset. Are you feeling ill?" "I'm fine," she whispered. I poured wine into 6 glasses, one for each adult present. The rich, burgundy liquid caught the light of the chandelier, looking innocent and inviting. "A toast," I announced, lifting my glass. "To family, to love, and to the bonds that tie us together, no matter what." Daniel raised his glass with a smile. Megan followed suit, looking puzzled by the strange atmosphere, but willing to participate. Robert, Catherine, and Laura sat frozen, staring at their wineglasses as if they contained liquid death, which, as far as they knew, they did. "Come now," I encouraged. "Don't be shy. This is a moment to savor." Daniel took a sip of his wine and smiled. "This is incredible, Dad. Really exceptional." Megan tasted hers as well. "It's beautiful, so smooth." I sipped my own wine, savoring both the excellent vintage and the growing panic on my other children's faces. "Catherine, you haven't touched your wine?" I observed. "Neither have you, Laura, or Robert. Don't you like it?" I'm not drinking tonight," Catherine stammered. "Neither am I," Laura added quickly. "How unfortunate. This wine is really extraordinary." I took another sip, watching them carefully. Although, I have to say, it tastes a little different than I expected. There's an unusual aftertaste. Almost bitter? Catherine made a choking sound. "Bitter how?" Daniel asked, swirling his wine and inhaling its bouquet. "I can't quite place it." "Laura, you've always had such a sophisticated palate. What do you think?" Laura was backing away from the table. "Dad, I think we should probably..." "Should probably what, dear?" "Should probably not drink any more of that wine." The words exploded from her, like a dam bursting raw terror, overriding her attempts at deception. Daniel set down his glass and stared at his sister. "Laura, what are you talking about?" "The wine," she whispered. "There's something wrong with the wine." "What's wrong with it?" I asked gently. It's poisoned," I suggested. The word hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle. Catherine buried her face in her hands. Robert closed his eyes as if he could will the moment away. "How did you know?" Laura asked, her voice barely audible. Daniel looked around the table in utter confusion. "Know what? What are you all talking about?" I set down my wineglass and looked at each of my children in turn, the ones who had tried to kill me, and the one who was learning the truth for the very first time. "I know because I had the wine tested," I said calmly. 2 weeks ago, after Catherine's panic attack when I mentioned opening it, I discovered it contains enough ricin to kill everyone at this table." Megan gasped and pushed her chair back from the table. James went rigid. his face cycling through disbelief, horror, and finally, rage. "You poisoned the wine?" he said, staring at Robert, Catherine, and Laura. "You tried to kill our father." "We can explain," Robert began. "Explain what?" Daniel's voice was rising. "Explain attempted murder. Explain why you tried to poison our own father." "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," Catherine sobbed, tears streaming down her face. "He was supposed to drink it alone on New Year's Eve. It was supposed to look like natural causes." Natural causes. Megan was holding Lily protectively, as if her daughter might be in danger from her own relatives. "You tried to murder a 70-year-old man and make it look like he died of old age." I sat quietly, letting my children confront each other with the truth I had already unearthed. The wine glasses sat untouched on the table between us, harmless now, but symbolic of the poison that had infected my family long before anyone had tampered with a bottle of Bordeaux. "Why?" Daniel asked, his voice broken. "Why would you do this?" Laura looked at me with an expression that might have been remorse, or might have been cold calculation. "Because he was never going to die," she said. "He's 70 years old and healthy as a horse. He could live another 20 years, maybe more, and we need our inheritance now." "Needed for what?" "For our lives, for our futures, for our children's futures." Robert finally spoke, his lawyer's voice attempting to regain control of the spiraling situation. "Daniel, you don't understand the financial pressures we're under. Catherine and I have substantial debts. Laura's business is failing. We all have obligations that can't wait. So, you decided to murder our father." "We decided to accelerate the timeline," Robert said carefully. I had heard enough. "Detective Shaw," I called toward the kitchen, "I believe you have what you need." Lieutenant Shaw emerged from the kitchen, his caterer's apron gone, replaced by a badge and a service weapon. "Robert Pendleton, Catherine Pendleton, Laura Pendleton, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder in the first degree." The next few minutes were chaos. Miranda rights being read, handcuffs being applied, my 3 children being led away, while Daniel sat in stunned shock and Megan tried to comfort a crying Lily. But through it all, I remained calm, seated at the head of my dining room table, wearing my best suit and my signet ring like armor against the utter disintegration of my family. I had survived their attempts to kill me. I had exposed their crimes with witnesses and irrefutable evidence. I had protected Daniel and Megan and Lily from becoming victims of the same corrosive greed that had already claimed Robert, Catherine, and Laura. Some victories taste bitter, even when they are absolutely necessary. Some families are worth saving, even if it means destroying them first. The house felt different after my children were arrested. Not empty, I had been living alone since Eleanor's death, but somehow lighter, as if a poisonous presence had finally been purged from the air itself. I walked through the rooms where Robert, Catherine, and Laura had plotted my murder, and felt only a profound sense of relief that their wicked schemes had been brought into the light. The media attention was immediate and overwhelming. Connecticut socialites' children arrested for attempted poisoning. Inheritance murder plot exposed by hidden cameras. Wine gift from hell. How a 70-year-old widower outsmarted his would-be killers. The headlines painted me as either a brilliant detective or a tragic victim, depending on the publication's particular angle. The truth, as is often the case, was far more complex than either portrayal. Leonard Vance arrived at my house the morning after the arrests, carrying a briefcase full of legal documents and wearing the grim expression of a man who had witnessed too much family destruction in his long career. "Arthur, the district attorney wants to discuss the charges with you," he said, settling into Eleanor's favorite chair in the study. They are considering adding conspiracy to commit murder for financial gain, which carries a potential life sentence. Good. Leonard looked surprised by my matter-of-fact response. This is your family we're talking about, Arthur. Your own children. Are you certain you wish to pursue the maximum possible charges? Leonard, they tried to kill me twice. If I hadn't been suspicious enough to have the evidence tested, I would be dead right now. They would be publicly mourning my tragic passing, while secretly celebrating their financial windfall. The defense attorneys will argue that no actual harm was done, that this should be treated as a simple attempted murder rather than a capital crime. No harm was done because I prevented it. That does not make their intentions any less murderous. Leonard pulled out a folder containing the preliminary police reports. The investigation has already uncovered some interesting details about how they obtained the poison. Robert has connections in the pharmaceutical industry through his law practice. Catherine researched ricin extraction methods online for months. Laura purchased a large quantity of castor beans through a gardening supply company. So, this wasn't a spontaneous decision. Far from it. It appears they have been planning your murder since at least last summer, possibly longer. Last summer, when I had been deep in grief over Eleanor's death, depending on my children for emotional support. While I had been at my most vulnerable and trusting, they had been researching ways to kill me. What about Daniel? I asked. The investigation must have determined his level of involvement. Daniel appears to be completely innocent. His phone records, financial documents, and internet search history show no connection whatsoever to the murder plot. If anything, it seems he was deliberately excluded from his siblings' planning. That was some small consolation, at least. One of my children had retained enough humanity to refuse to participate in patricide. There's something else, Leonard continued. The investigators have found evidence that this wasn't their first foray into fraud. Catherine filed a suspicious claim for jewelry theft last year that was later withdrawn. Laura's business received several large payments from shell corporations that appear to have been funded by accounts belonging to Robert's clients. They've been stealing for longer than they've been planning to kill me. It would appear so. Your murder would have been the culmination of years of financial crimes, not an isolated incident. That evening, Daniel came to see me. He looked older than his 36 years, as if the shocking revelations of the past week had aged him by decades. Dad, I don't know what to say. I had no idea what they were planning. I know, my boy. I never for a moment suspected you were involved. But how did you know? How did you figure it out when I completely missed all the signs? I poured us both a small glass of brandy from the crystal decanter Eleanor had cherished. The same brandy I had been drinking the night my suspicions about the Christmas wine first took root. I knew because I have lived for 70 years, Daniel. I have learned to recognize when people see me as an obstacle rather than a person. Your siblings stopped looking at me as their father months ago. To them, I had become nothing more than a barrier standing between them and 12 million. 12 million. Daniel shook his head. I knew you and Mom were comfortable, but I had no idea the estate was worth that much. Actually, it's worth considerably more than that. Your siblings made their calculations based on incomplete information. Daniel looked at me sharply. What do you mean? I walked to the safe hidden behind Eleanor's portrait and removed several documents I had never shown to any of my children. The Hawaii properties alone are valued at $4 million. The investment accounts your siblings knew about represent only half of our actual portfolio. There are business interests, art collections, jewelry, and other assets they never discovered. How much? Approximately 30 million, depending on current market valuations. Daniel set down his brandy glass and stared at me. 30 million, Dad? That's more than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. It is more than anyone truly needs, which is precisely why I have decided to completely restructure my entire estate plan. I handed him a document Leonard had prepared for me that morning, a new will that would reshape our family's future in ways my arrested children could never have imagined. Daniel, I'm leaving everything to you. What? The house, the properties, the investments, all of it. Robert, Catherine, and Laura forfeited their inheritance the moment they tried to murder me. Dad, I can't accept that. It's too much. They're still your children, despite what they've done. Are they? Children do not plot their parents' deaths for financial gain. Children do not research methods of poisoning or calculate inheritance timelines while their father is grieving the loss of his wife. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, staring at the legal document that would make him one of the wealthiest men in Connecticut. What about their children? Lily and any future grandchildren? This punishes them for their parents' crimes. I have established trust funds for any grandchildren, including Lily. They will be well provided for, but they will not inherit a fortune their parents tried to commit murder for. And Megan will receive a substantial inheritance as well. She has proven herself to be a loving daughter-in-law and a devoted mother. She deserves that security. Daniel set the document on the table between us, his expression troubled. Dad, this feels like I'm profiting from my siblings' crimes. You are inheriting wealth that would otherwise have been stolen by murderers. There is a difference. Is there? They're still my brother and sister. Whatever they've done, they're still family. I looked at this son of mine, who had somehow managed to retain his moral compass while his siblings had completely lost theirs, and I felt a mixture of profound pride and deep sadness. Daniel, family is more than just shared DNA. Family is love, loyalty, protection, support. Your siblings abandoned those values when they decided I was worth more to them dead than alive. But if you disinherit them completely, if they go to prison for decades, their lives are essentially over. Their lives ended the moment they became murderers. I am simply making the consequences official. Daniel stood up and walked to the window, overlooking the garden where he had played as a child, where all my children had learned to walk and ride bicycles and climb trees. What kind of father disinherits his own children? The question hit me like a physical blow, but I had been expecting it. The kind of father who refuses to reward attempted murder with a financial inheritance. The kind of father who protects his innocent grandchildren from parents who see family members as sources of income rather than as people worthy of love. They'll appeal the will. They'll claim you weren't competent to make these decisions. Let them try. I have documented everything. Their attempts at poisoning, the physical evidence, their recorded confessions. Any court in the land will recognize that disinheriting the people who tried to kill you is a perfectly rational decision. Daniel turned back to me, his eyes filled with pain. Dad, if you do this, you're destroying our family forever. Our family was destroyed the moment your siblings decided to poison me for money. I am simply acknowledging the reality of the situation. He picked up the will and studied it again, then set it down with an air of resignation. If this is what you want, I'll support your decision, but I want you to know that I will use this inheritance to take care of Lily and any other grandchildren, regardless of what their parents have done. I would expect nothing less from you. After Daniel left, I sat alone in my study, surrounded by the documents that would reshape my family's future. $30 million, accumulated over 40 years of careful planning and wise investment, now concentrated in the hands of the one child who had never asked for a thing. Outside, a light snow was beginning to fall again, dusting the garden where my children had once played together in apparent innocence. It was hard to reconcile those memories with the reality of what they had become. Harder still to accept that love, no matter how deep or enduring, wasn't always enough to prevent people from becoming monsters. But some decisions are about justice rather than love. Some inheritances have to be earned rather than assumed. Some fathers have to choose between enabling evil and preventing it, even when the choice destroys everything they once held dear. I had made my choice. Now, I would live with the consequences, just as my children would live with theirs. The trial began 6 months later, in the spring, when Connecticut had emerged from its winter cocoon into a season of brilliant green renewal. I watched as the courthouse steps filled with a throng of reporters and television cameras, and I walked through the media gauntlet with my head held high, my signet ring catching the morning sunlight like a piece of armor. The state had charged Robert, Catherine, and Laura with conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, attempted murder, and financial elder abuse. Their defense attorneys, expensive lawyers, paid for with money from assets I had helped them accumulate over the years, argued that their clients had never intended any actual harm, that this was simply a case of poor judgment rather than a premeditated plot to commit murder. Poor judgment. As if researching methods of poisoning and calculating inheritance timelines was equivalent to forgetting to return a library book. I testified on the second day of the trial, taking the witness stand in the very same courthouse where Eleanor had practiced law for 30 years. The prosecutor, a sharp young man named Andrew Chen, led me through the timeline of events with a clinical, dispassionate precision. Mr. Pendleton, when you first received the bottle of wine as a Christmas gift, did you have any reason to suspect it might be dangerous? Not initially. I was grateful that my children had given me something so thoughtful and expensive. What changed your mind? My daughter-in-law's reaction when I mentioned the possibility of opening it. She became hysterical, begging me to wait, offering a series of increasingly desperate excuses as to why I shouldn't drink the wine. Did this seem to you like a normal level of concern for preserving an expensive gift? No. It seemed like terror. The terror of someone who knew that consuming that wine would be lethal. The defense attorneys, in their cross-examination, tried to portray me as a paranoid elderly man who had misinterpreted his children's genuine concern for his well-being. Robert's lawyer, a silver-haired man who specialized in white-collar crime, even had the audacity to suggest that I might have poisoned the wine myself to frame my own children for insurance money. Mr. Pendleton, isn't it true that your late wife left behind significant debts that you have been struggling to pay? My wife left no debts. Our estate is worth approximately $30 million. $30 million that your children knew nothing about. They knew about some of our assets. They made their calculations based on incomplete information. So, you deliberately concealed your wealth from your own children? I looked at this man, who was being paid a handsome sum to help murderers escape the consequences of their actions, and I felt nothing but utter contempt. I maintained a degree of financial privacy, which is my right, as the person who earned that money. My children's ignorance of our complete financial situation does not, in any way, justify their attempt to murder me. Catherine's testimony was a masterpiece of self-serving manipulation. She claimed the entire poison plot had been Robert's idea, that she had only participated because she feared for her own safety if she refused. She cried beautifully for the jury, playing the role of the manipulated wife who had been coerced into a life of crime by her controlling, overbearing husband. "I never wanted to hurt Arthur," she sobbed. "I love him like my own father. But Robert said we were all in terrible debt, that this was the only way to save our family from financial ruin." Laura took a different approach, arguing that the whole affair had been nothing more than a prank gone terribly wrong. She claimed they had never intended for me to actually drink the poisoned wine, that they had planned to reveal the joke before any harm was done. "We thought it would be funny," she said, her voice steady and convincing. To see Dad's reaction when he found out we'd given him a bottle of fake wine. It was just supposed to be a harmless family prank. A harmless family prank involving lethal doses of ricin and cyanide. Robert, true to his legal training, remained silent for most of the trial, allowing his attorney to argue that the prosecution had failed to prove any actual intent to kill. The poison, he claimed, was never meant to be consumed. His clients were guilty of poor judgment, perhaps, but not of attempted murder. The prosecution's response was devastating in its simplicity. Andrew Chen played the audio recordings from the dinner party, where my children had revealed their intimate knowledge of the poisoned wine. He showed the jury photographs of the ricin-laced bottle, the cyanide-tainted dessert, and the months of internet searches detailing various methods of poisoning. Most damning of all, he presented a series of financial documents proving that my children had been planning to liquidate my assets immediately following my death, with contracts and bank accounts already prepared to receive the inheritance they so confidently expected to receive. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he said in his closing argument, "the defendants would have you believe that this was all a misunderstanding, a prank gone wrong, a momentary lapse in judgment. But premeditated murder is not a moment. It is a process. And this process took months." He walked them through the timeline, the research into poison methods, the purchase of the necessary materials, the careful preparation of the wine bottle, the elaborate Christmas presentation designed to make me feel grateful for receiving my own death sentence. This was not poor judgment. This was a sophisticated, calculated, cold-blooded attempt at murder for financial gain. The only reason Arthur Pendleton is alive today is because he was smart enough to recognize the danger and brave enough to expose it. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. When they returned, their faces were grim. "On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, how do you find? Guilty. On the charges of financial elder abuse, how do you find? Guilty." Robert was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Catherine received 20 years. Laura, who had planned the cyanide poisoning independently, was given a sentence of 22 years. They would all be elderly by the time they were released, if they were released at all. The appeals process would take years. Parole would be highly unlikely for violent offenders, and their advanced ages would make them poor candidates for early release. In effect, I had sentenced my own children to die in prison. After the sentencing, I stood on the courthouse steps, facing a battery of microphones and television cameras. Reporters shouted questions at me, asking how it felt to testify against my own children, whether I felt guilty about their lengthy prison sentences, what message I wanted to send to other families who might be facing similar betrayals. "I want people to understand that family loyalty does not require you to accept victimization," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos swirling around me. "Love does not mean allowing people to harm you without consequences, and being elderly does not mean being helpless." "Do you forgive your children for what they did?" one reporter called out. I thought about the question, about the complex relationship between forgiveness and justice, and the crucial difference between enabling and loving. "I forgive them for being weak enough to choose money over family," I said finally. "I do not forgive them for trying to murder me. Some actions are unforgivable, regardless of who commits them." That evening, I hosted a quiet dinner for Daniel, Megan, and Lily. We ate in the same dining room, where the poisoned wine had once been displayed, but the atmosphere was now peaceful rather than poisonous. "Dad, are you all right?" Daniel asked as we finished our dessert. "Today must have been incredibly difficult." "Today was necessary," I replied. "Difficult, but necessary. Do you ever wonder if there was another way? Some solution that wouldn't have destroyed the family completely? I looked at my granddaughter, who was happily playing with her food, blissfully oblivious to the heavy adult conversation around her. Lily would grow up knowing that her aunts and uncle were in prison for trying to murder their own father. That knowledge would undoubtedly shape her understanding of family, of loyalty, and of the devastating consequences of greed. Daniel, there was another way. Your siblings could have chosen love over money, patience over greed, family loyalty over personal gain. They made their choice. I made mine. And now we move forward. Lily will grow up understanding that actions have consequences, that family bonds are sacred but not unconditional, and that some choices can never be undone. After they left, I walked through my house, the house that had been a crime scene, a fortress, and now, finally, a home again. In every room, I could feel the absence of the poison that had infected our family for so many months. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of rebuilding a life without 3 of my children. It would be lonely at times, but it would be authentic, in a way our family hadn't been since Eleanor's death. Some tables are cleared by washing the dishes. Some tables are cleared by removing the poison from the room entirely. I had chosen the latter, and I was finally at peace with that choice. 2 years passed before I saw any of my imprisoned children again. The visit took place at the Connecticut Correctional Institution for Women, where Laura was serving her 22-year sentence in a facility that looked more like a college campus than a prison. I drove there on a crisp October morning, the trees blazing with autumn colors that reminded me of happier family gatherings in years past. Laura had requested the visit through her lawyer, claiming she had important information about additional crimes that had never been prosecuted. The authorities had encouraged me to meet with her, hoping she might provide evidence about other financial frauds she, Robert, and Catherine had committed. I wasn't entirely sure why I had agreed to come. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was some lingering paternal instinct that hoped she had found genuine remorse during her incarceration. Perhaps I simply wanted to see what 2 years of consequences had done to someone who had once believed that murder was an acceptable solution to her financial problems. The prison visiting room was surprisingly pleasant, bright and clean, with large windows that looked out over beautifully landscaped grounds. Laura was already seated at a small table when I arrived, wearing the standard prison uniform but looking healthier than I had expected. Prison, it seemed, agreed with her. "Hello, Dad," she said as I sat across from her. The guard station nearby was close enough to intervene if necessary, but far enough away to allow for a private conversation. "Laura, you look well. Younger, somehow. Has retirement been treating you well?" Retirement. As if my withdrawal from all social activities after her imprisonment had been a lifestyle choice rather than a necessity. "I'm managing. You wanted to see me about some additional crimes." Laura smiled, and for a fleeting moment, she looked like the little girl who used to climb into my lap for bedtime stories. "Actually, I lied about that. I wanted to see you for personal reasons, which are, I wanted to apologize. Not the kind of apology the lawyers coach you to give at your sentencing, but a real one, from a daughter to her father." I studied her face, searching for any signs of manipulation or genuine remorse. After 40 years of fatherhood and 70 years of life experience, I had learned to recognize the difference. "Go on, Dad. What we did to you was unforgivable. Not just the poison, the whole thing. The way we treated you after Mom died. The way we saw you as an obstacle instead of a person. The way we planned your death as if it were a business transaction." Her voice was steady, her eyes clear. If this was a manipulation, it was far more sophisticated than anything she had attempted before her imprisonment. "Why now, Laura? Why this apology after 2 years?" "Because I've had 2 years to think about what kind of person I became. 2 years to realize that we didn't just try to kill you. We killed our family. We destroyed everything you and Mom built. Everything that made us who we used to be. I waited for her to continue. I know you can't forgive me. I know I can't undo what we did. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what we lost. It wasn't just your money we were after. It was our souls. And we traded them for something that was never really ours to begin with. It was a good apology. Thoughtful, specific, acknowledging both the crime and its far-reaching consequences. But I had heard Laura give convincing performances before. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Nothing." That's the point. For the first time since Mom died, maybe for the first time in my entire adult life, I'm not asking you for anything. I just wanted you to know that your daughter, the real daughter you raised, not the monster she became, is still in here somewhere. We sat in silence for several minutes. Outside the windows, other inmates walked across the grounds with family members who had come to visit. Some conversations looked heated, others tearful, others strictly businesslike. All of them carried the heavy weight of choices that could not be undone. "How are Robert and Catherine?" I asked finally. Laura's expression darkened. "Robert is struggling. Men's prison is a different world than this place. He's had some problems with other inmates, especially when they found out he tried to poison his elderly father. And Catherine blames you. She thinks you overreacted, that we never would have actually let you drink the wine. She's convinced herself that this was all your fault for not trusting us. Do you believe that?" Laura looked me directly in the eyes. "Dad, I spent months researching how to kill you with cyanide. I practiced making poison desserts until I got the dosage just right. I calculated exactly how long it would take you to die and what symptoms you would experience." Her voice was steady, but filled with a profound self-loathing. "There is no overreaction to attempted murder. There is only justice." I felt something shift inside my chest. Not forgiveness, exactly, but a lessening of the cold anger I had carried for 2 long years. "What will you do when you're released?" Laura laughed, a bitter sound. "I'll be 61 years old when I get out, if I live that long. No job prospects, no family connections, a felony murder conviction on my record. I'll probably end up working in a convenience store until I die." That's not necessarily true. "Dad, no one hires elderly ex-convicts who tried to poison their own fathers." I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out an envelope I had prepared before driving to the prison. "What's this?" "A cashier's check for 50. Enough to get you started when you're released, if you choose to use it constructively." Laura stared at the envelope as if it might contain another form of poison. "I don't understand. Why would you give me money after what I did to you?" "Because you are still my daughter. Because prison has been your punishment, not a life of poverty for the rest of your days. Because I would rather you rebuild yourself into someone worth being than spend the next 20 years plotting your revenge against me. I don't deserve this." "No, you don't. But mercy isn't about what people deserve. It's about who you choose to be, when you have the power to either help or harm someone who has wronged you." Laura opened the envelope with shaking hands, stared at the check, then set it carefully on the table between us. "There are conditions," I continued. "You are to never contact Daniel, Megan, or Lily. You are to never discuss our family with the media. You are to use this money to build a legitimate life, not to fund more schemes or revenge fantasies. And if you violate any of those conditions, then you will discover that I can be just as thorough in destroying people as I was in saving myself from you." We talked for another hour about inconsequential things. her prison job in the library, the classes she was taking, the books she had been reading. A normal father-daughter conversation, if you ignored the presence of armed guards and the reason we were meeting in a correctional facility. As I prepared to leave, Laura reached across the table and touched my hand, the first physical contact we'd had since before her arrest. "Dad, I want you to know something. The daughter you raised, the one who used to help you in the garden and bake cookies at Christmas, she's still here. Prison didn't create her, but it reminded me that she existed. I hope that's true, Laura. For your sake, will I ever see you again after I'm released?" I thought about the question, about forgiveness and family, and the possibility of redemption even after the most terrible of betrayals. "Ask me in 20 years, I said. I drove home through the autumn landscape, thinking about mercy and justice, and the fine line between enabling and love. Laura seemed genuinely remorseful, but I had been fooled by my children's performances before. The money I had given her was a calculated risk, an investment in the possibility that people could change, even after committing unforgivable acts. If I was wrong, 0 was a small price to pay for confirming that she was irredeemable. If I was right, it might be the foundation for rebuilding a relationship that had been poisoned by greed, but was not necessarily dead forever. That evening, I called Daniel and told him about the prison visit. "You gave her money?" He sounded incredulous. "Dad, she tried to kill you, and she is paying the price for that choice. But she is still my daughter, and I am still her father. That doesn't excuse what she did, but it doesn't disappear either. What if she uses the money to hire someone to hurt you? What if this is all just an elaborate manipulation? Then I will deal with those consequences when they arise. But I refuse to let the fear of what she might do prevent me from choosing mercy when it feels right." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "I don't think I could be that forgiving." "I'm not forgiving her, Daniel. I'm giving her a chance to earn forgiveness. There's a difference. Some gifts are poisoned. Some gifts are antidotes to poison. Time would tell which category this one belonged to." 5 years later, I received a letter that changed everything. It arrived on a Tuesday morning in late spring, mixed in with the usual collection of bills and charity solicitations that filled my mailbox. The return address was unfamiliar, a post office box in Vermont, but the handwriting on the envelope was unmistakably Laura's. I sat in Eleanor's study, surrounded by the books and photographs that had been my comfort through the years since my family's destruction, and opened my daughter's letter with hands that trembled slightly. "Dear Dad, I know I promised never to contact you unless it was an emergency, but I think this qualifies. I've been out of prison for 6 months now, and I wanted you to know what I've done with the second chance you gave me. I used your money to enroll in a community college program for addiction counseling. It turns out that many women in prison struggle with the same issues I faced: feeling worthless, making destructive choices, believing that love has to be earned through manipulation rather than given freely. I am now working at a halfway house for women recently released from prison. The pay is terrible, the work is hard, and every day I see reflections of the person I used to be. But for the first time in my adult life, I am helping people instead of hurting them. I know this doesn't undo what I did to you. I know it doesn't erase the poison I put in your wine or the years of your life I stole with my greed. But I wanted you to know that your daughter, the real one, not the monster she became, is finally doing something that would make you proud. I won't ask to see you. I won't ask for more money, or help, or a forgiveness I haven't earned. I just wanted you to know that your investment in my redemption was not wasted. I love you, Dad. I always did, even when I was too broken to show it. Laura, P.S. I've enclosed a photograph of the garden I've started behind the halfway house. You taught me that growing things requires patience, proper soil, and the faith that something beautiful can emerge from dirt. I'm finally learning to apply those lessons to people as well as plants. The photograph showed a small but thriving vegetable garden, with neat rows of tomatoes, peppers, and herbs growing in carefully tended soil. In the background, I could see several women working among the plants, their faces peaceful and focused. I set the letter and the photograph on Eleanor's desk and walked to the window overlooking my own garden, where the spring flowers were blooming in the very beds Laura had helped me plant as a child. The irony was not lost on me. The daughter who had tried to poison me was now growing food to nourish other people. Redemption, it seemed, could be as patient and as persistent as poison if you gave it the right conditions to flourish. That afternoon, I called Leonard Vance and asked him to make some additions to my will. "Arthur, are you sure about this?" he asked, after I had explained what I wanted. "After everything that's happened?" "Leonard, I have spent 75 years learning that people are capable of both enormous evil and extraordinary good. Sometimes the very same people demonstrate both capabilities. What about Daniel and Megan? How will they feel about you leaving money to Laura? Daniel and Megan will inherit the vast majority of my estate, but Laura will receive enough to continue her education and maintain her work, helping other women rebuild their lives. And if she reverts to her old patterns? If she uses your money for destructive purposes?" I thought about the photograph of women tending plants in the Vermont soil, about the careful handwriting that had once forged my signature and was now writing letters of genuine remorse. Then I will have been wrong about people's capacity for change. But I would rather be wrong about redemption than right about hopelessness. Leonard made notes about the new bequests, then looked up at me with the expression of a man who had spent decades watching families destroy themselves over money. "Arthur, in 40 years of legal practice, I have never seen anyone handle a family betrayal with your combination of justice and mercy. I've had excellent teachers in both qualities." That evening I wrote a letter of my own. "Dear Laura, your letter filled me with something I hadn't felt in years. Pride in one of my children. I want you to know that I see the work you are doing, and I understand what it costs you to help people who struggle with the same demons you once faced. There is no greater evidence of redemption than using your worst experiences to prevent others from making your same mistakes. I am enclosing information about a scholarship fund I have established for women pursuing careers in social work and addiction counseling. You will be the first recipient, but I hope there will be many others. The fund is administered by professionals, so you will have to maintain your grades and demonstrate a continued commitment to helping others. But if you do those things, your education will be fully paid for. I want to be clear about something. This does not mean I have forgotten what you did to me. I will never forget the poison you put in my wine or the months you spent planning my murder. But I have chosen to remember other things as well. The little girl who helped me plant roses, the teenager who brought me breakfast in bed on Father's Day, the daughter who had the courage to acknowledge her mistakes and work to become a better person. People are more than their worst decisions, Laura, even people who make decisions as terrible as yours. I am proud of who you are becoming. Your mother would be proud too. Love, Dad. I mailed the letter the next morning, along with the scholarship application materials and a photograph of my own garden in full spring bloom. 6 months later, I received a call from the director of the halfway house where Laura worked. "Mr. Pendleton, I wanted you to know that your daughter has been accepted into the graduate program at the University of Vermont. She'll be studying clinical psychology with a specialization in trauma recovery. How is she doing?" "She's one of the most dedicated students we have ever worked with. The women here trust her because she has been where they are. She is saving lives, Mr. Pendleton, every single day." That Christmas, the first Christmas since my children's imprisonment that I felt genuinely hopeful about my family, I received a package from Vermont. Inside was a jar of honey from beehives Laura had installed at the halfway house, along with a note. "Dad, the women here have learned to tend bees as part of their therapy program. Bees, it turns out, are excellent teachers about community, hard work, and creating sweetness from simple ingredients. I thought you'd appreciate the metaphor. Thank you for teaching me that some gifts are worth the wait. Love, Laura." I sat in my kitchen that evening, spreading Laura's honey on a piece of warm bread and thinking about the strange journey that had led us from attempted murder to a genuine reconciliation. It had taken years, prison sentences, and the kind of mercy that feels impossible until you discover it within yourself. Not all of my children had found their way back to humanity. Robert was still in prison, unrepentant and bitter. Catherine had been released on parole, but had disappeared rather than face the social consequences of her crimes. I might never see either of them again, but Laura had chosen a different path. She had transformed her worst experiences into tools for healing others, her deepest shame into a source of genuine service. Some families are destroyed by poison. Some families discover antidotes strong enough to neutralize even the deadliest of toxins. Mine had done both. As I prepared for bed that night, I walked through the house where my children had planned to kill me, where I had exposed their crimes, where I had learned to choose justice over comfortable lies. Every room held memories of betrayal and redemption, of love corrupted by greed and love refined by consequence. In the dining room, I paused at the sideboard where the poisoned wine bottle had once sat like a loaded gun disguised as a gift. Now it held a vase of fresh flowers from my garden and photographs of Lily, who was growing into a confident 7-year-old with her grandfather's gentle eyes and her grandmother's determined spirit. Lily would grow up understanding that actions have consequences, that family loyalty requires reciprocal respect, and that some people can choose to become better than their worst mistakes. Those were hard lessons for a child to learn, but they were true lessons. Truth, I had discovered, was more valuable than comfort. Justice was more valuable than a false peace. And mercy, when it was earned, rather than simply assumed, was the most valuable gift of all. Some fathers raise children who love them. Some fathers raise children who try to kill them. Some fathers are strong enough to survive both experiences and wise enough to know the crucial difference between enabling and loving. At 75 years old, I had finally learned to be that kind of father. The poison was gone, from my house, from my family, and from my heart. Only the antidote remained. Arthur's story shows us that strength isn't just about fighting back. It's about knowing your own worth and refusing to accept anything less than you deserve, no matter who is offering the alternative. If his journey resonates with you, if you have ever felt underestimated because of your age or manipulated by people who should have loved you, then you need our book, Reclaiming Your Peace After Pain. This powerful guide has already helped thousands of people to recognize the warning signs of manipulation, to set boundaries that protect them, and to reclaim their power from those who see them as easy targets. Whether you are dealing with family betrayal, financial abuse, or simply feeling invisible in your own life, this book will show you practical steps to take back control and write your own triumphant ending. Don't let anyone convince you that your best years are behind you. Arthur proved that the most powerful people are often the ones who have been underestimated the longest. Click the link in the description to order your copy today and start reclaiming the respect you have always deserved.